The Christmas tree lights cast a warm glow across my parents' living room where 31 family members had gathered for our traditional holiday celebration. Wrapping paper scattered the floor around the massive tree, and the familiar sounds of children playing with new toys mixed with adult conversations about work, travel plans, and New Year's resolutions. I sat on the sofa near the fireplace, quietly opening presents and listening to the comfortable chaos that defined these annual gatherings. My sister Amanda, 35 and perpetually confident about her business acumen despite a series of failed ventures, stood near the mantelpiece addressing the room like she was making an important announcement to assembled shareholders. She wore an expensive red dress that complemented her carefully styled hair and professional makeup, maintaining the polished appearance she'd cultivated since completing her real estate license program 18 months ago. Before we finish opening presents, I have some exciting family news to share, Amanda declared, raising her wine glass to ensure she had everyone's complete attention. The room gradually quieted as relatives turned from their conversations to focus on her presentation. I've made a major decision about the family's real estate investments that will benefit everyone involved. I continued unwrapping a book from my aunt while listening to Amanda's build-up with the patient attention I'd learned to maintain during her frequent announcements about new business opportunities and strategic initiatives. At 32, I developed the habit of staying calm and observant during family gatherings, particularly when Amanda was preparing to reveal one of her entrepreneurial plans. As you all know, Kevin owns that little duplex rental property on Maple Street, Amanda continued, gesturing toward me with her wine glass. It's been generating steady income for a few years, but honestly it's not being managed to its full potential. The property could be producing significantly more revenue with proper marketing, tenant screening, and maintenance coordination. My cousin Robert, who worked in commercial real estate development, nodded with obvious interest. Property management is definitely specialized work. Are you talking about taking over the management responsibilities? Amanda's smile broadened as she prepared to reveal what she clearly considered a masterful solution to underutilized family assets. Actually, I've decided to take full ownership of the property. Kevin's never been particularly interested in real estate investment strategies, and I have the professional expertise and time to maximize the property's value. The casual announcement of property theft hung in the air for a moment before several relatives began murmuring approval. My uncle Tom, who owned 2 rental properties in the suburbs, actually nodded with appreciation. That makes a lot of sense. Real estate requires active management and industry knowledge. That rental property is mine now, Amanda declared with obvious satisfaction. Finally, someone who understands real estate management instead of just collecting checks. The room erupted in enthusiastic support for Amanda's decision. My mother clapped her hands together with genuine delight. This is wonderful. Amanda has such a good head for business, and Kevin's always been more interested in his government work than property management. My father nodded approvingly from his recliner near the tree. Smart family planning. Why let a valuable asset sit underutilized when someone with real expertise can maximize its potential? Cousin Jennifer, who had recently completed her MBA, looked genuinely impressed. That's excellent strategic thinking, Amanda. Property ownership requires dedicated attention and professional management skills that not everyone possesses. I opened presents quietly and peacefully, maintaining my calm expression while listening to the family's overwhelming support for Amanda's announcement. They had no way of knowing that my little duplex was registered with the Treasury Department's Financial Crimes Enforcement Network as a monitored asset under federal security protocols, or that any unauthorized ownership transfers would trigger automatic investigation procedures. Amanda had just announced her intention to commit federal property fraud involving assets belonging to someone with top-secret security clearance. What the family saw as practical resource allocation was actually a confession to serious federal crimes that would result in years of federal prison time and permanent criminal records. My work as a senior intelligence analyst with the Department of Homeland Security's Financial Intelligence Unit required comprehensive disclosure and monitoring of all personal assets, including real estate investments. The duplex had been purchased through official channels with full federal oversight, and its ownership was protected under multiple security protocols designed to prevent exploitation or compromise of sensitive government personnel. The property transfer paperwork is already in progress, Amanda continued, basking in the family's admiration for her business initiative. I've been working with a real estate attorney to handle all the legal details. Kevin doesn't need to worry about any of the complicated procedures. My grandmother, who had always worried about my financial planning and investment decisions, reached over to pat my hand with obvious relief. This is such a blessing, dear. Amanda will take good care of the property and make sure it generates proper income for the family. Uncle Tom raised his beer bottle in an impromptu toast. Here's to Amanda's real estate expertise and Kevin's contribution to family wealth building. Smart asset management benefits everyone. The extended family joined the toast with genuine enthusiasm, celebrating what they believed was an example of effective family cooperation and strategic resource utilization. I was surrounded by 31 relatives who had just applauded federal property fraud while congratulating both the perpetrator and the victim. The current tenants are month to month, so I'll be able to implement proper lease agreements and market rate pricing immediately, Amanda explained with obvious professional pride. I'm already researching comparable rental rates in the neighborhood, and I believe we can increase the monthly income by at least 40%. Cousin Robert leaned forward with clear interest in Amanda's business strategy. What's your timeline for the ownership transfer and management transition? Everything should be finalized by the end of January, Amanda replied confidently. The legal documentation is straightforward since it's staying within the family. I've already started marketing the property to higher quality tenant prospects. The conversation continued with Amanda receiving detailed questions about her management plans, renovation ideas, and income projections. She had clearly researched the local rental market and prepared comprehensive answers about property improvements, tenant screening procedures, and long-term investment strategies. What she hadn't researched were the federal laws governing unauthorized transfer of monitored government employee assets, or the automatic investigation protocols triggered when protected property shows signs of potential compromise or fraud. As the evening progressed, Amanda continued receiving congratulations and business advice from various family members. She explained her marketing strategy for finding premium tenants, described her plans for property improvements that would justify higher rent, and shared her vision for expanding into additional real estate investments using the duplex as a foundation. After the presents were opened and dinner was served, Amanda pulled me aside in the kitchen while other family members were watching football and playing with children's new toys. She was slightly flushed with wine and the excitement of family approval, and her earlier professional confidence had shifted into something more genuinely enthusiastic about her real estate venture. Kevin, I know this might seem sudden, but I've been thinking about this property transition for months, she said, adopting the patient tone she used when explaining business concepts to people she considered less sophisticated about financial matters. You've never shown real interest in property management or real estate investment strategies, and I have the professional training and industry connections to maximize the asset's potential. I continued drying dishes and loading them into the cabinet, maintaining my peaceful demeanor. I'm sure you've put considerable thought into all aspects of this decision, Amanda. She seemed encouraged by my calm response and lack of objection to her unauthorized property seizure. Exactly. This is really beneficial for both of us and the entire family. You can focus on your government work without worrying about tenant issues, maintenance problems, or market fluctuations. I'll handle all the complex management responsibilities and make sure the property generates optimal returns. I hung up the dish towel and turned to face her directly. I hope your real estate venture proceeds according to your expectations, Amanda. Her smile widened with obvious relief that I wasn't going to create family drama by objecting to her perfectly reasonable business arrangement. I knew you'd understand once you thought about it logically. The property transfer will be handled professionally through proper legal channels, and I'll make sure you receive detailed reports about income and expenses. Monday morning arrived with the crisp December air that made Washington, D.C. feel particularly official and governmental. I arrived at the Department of Homeland Security building by 7:20 a.m. to begin another week of analyzing financial intelligence reports related to terrorist financing networks and money laundering operations targeting critical infrastructure. My position as a senior intelligence analyst required maintaining comprehensive awareness of financial crime patterns that might indicate threats to national security. The work involved coordinating with FBI counterterrorism units, Treasury Department financial intelligence divisions, and CIA analysts tracking international money flows that could support hostile activities against the United States. At 10:33 a.m., my secure phone buzzed with a call from my immediate supervisor, Deputy Director Sarah Martinez, who oversaw our financial intelligence analysis section and maintained direct communication with senior leadership about potential security threats. "Kevin, I need you in my office immediately," Deputy Director Martinez said with the tone that indicated a significant security matter had developed overnight. "We've detected unauthorized activity involving your personal assets that triggered automatic threat assessment protocols." I walked through the secured corridors to Deputy Director Martinez's office, passing the classified briefing rooms where other analysts were preparing intelligence reports for senior policymakers. Her office featured reinforced windows overlooking the Potomac River and sophisticated communication equipment for coordinating with other federal agencies. "Sit down," Deputy Director Martinez said, activating additional security measures that ensured complete privacy for sensitive conversations. "Our automated monitoring systems flagged attempted ownership transfer of your rental property by someone claiming family authorization." She opened a classified file containing copies of legal documents that showed Amanda's signature alongside forged versions of my signature on property transfer agreements. The transfer was initiated by Amanda Johnson, who represented herself as your authorized family representative with power of attorney to handle real estate transactions. I reviewed the documents, which clearly showed Amanda had submitted comprehensive paperwork to transfer ownership of my duplex to herself, including falsified authorization documents and fraudulent property transfer agreements with multiple government agencies. Deputy Director Martinez, Amanda Johnson is my sister. I did not authorize her to transfer ownership of my property or represent herself as my legal representative for any real estate transactions. Her expression shifted from procedural concern to serious security focus as the implications became clear. "So this is property fraud targeting a senior intelligence analyst with access to classified financial intelligence. That triggers immediate FBI involvement and potential national security investigation protocols." She secured the documents in the classified file. "Kevin, I need to ask directly. Did you have any knowledge of your sister's property transfer activities or any discussions about family real estate arrangements?" "I learned about Amanda's intentions at our family Christmas gathering when she announced to 31 relatives that she was taking ownership of my property. Most family members congratulated her on her business acumen and strategic resource utilization." Deputy Director Martinez stared at me with the expression of someone who had overseen financial intelligence operations for 12 years and still encountered new examples of criminal behavior combined with complete ignorance about federal security protocols. She announced federal property fraud at a family Christmas party with multiple witnesses present. 31 witnesses heard her declare ownership of my monitored federal asset. Several relatives specifically praised her for understanding real estate management better than I did. She reached for her secure phone to initiate coordination with federal law enforcement agencies. "Kevin, this requires immediate federal investigation under enhanced security protocols. Property fraud targeting intelligence personnel could indicate broader security threats or compromise attempts." At 2:45 p.m., Special Agent Michael Sullivan from the FBI's Counterintelligence Division arrived at DHS headquarters to coordinate the federal investigation. Agent Sullivan specialized in cases involving potential threats to intelligence personnel and had extensive experience with crimes targeting government employees with access to classified information. "Agent Johnson, I understand your sister has attempted unauthorized transfer of your monitored property," Agent Sullivan said as we met in a secure conference room equipped with additional counterintelligence protection measures. "Given your access to sensitive financial intelligence, we need to determine whether this represents isolated criminal behavior or potential hostile targeting of intelligence personnel." I provided a detailed account of Amanda's Christmas announcement and the family's enthusiastic support for her property seizure plan. Agent Sullivan took comprehensive notes and asked specific questions about family members who had knowledge of my government employment and security clearance status. This could represent either simple criminal fraud or a more sophisticated compromise attempt using family members as unwitting assets, Agent Sullivan observed after reviewing my statement. "We'll need to conduct comprehensive investigation of your sister's activities, associates, and potential connections to hostile intelligence services. He closed his notebook and looked at me with the serious expression reserved for potential national security threats. We'll be executing federal search warrants at your sister's residence and business locations within the next 2 hours. Given the national security implications, this investigation will proceed under enhanced protocols with full counterintelligence support. At 5:12 p.m. my personal cell phone rang. Amanda's name appeared on the screen. "Kevin, federal agents just surrounded my house with black SUVs and official badges." Her voice was panicked and confused. "They're saying I committed federal crimes involving national security violations and property fraud targeting intelligence personnel. I was completing my daily intelligence reports and preparing classified briefings for tomorrow's coordination meeting with FBI counterterrorism analysts. Through my office window, I could see other federal employees leaving the building after completing their Monday casework and security reviews." "That sounds very serious and concerning, Amanda. What specifically are the federal agents telling you?" "They have warrants for everything. My computers, business records, financial documents, and correspondence." Her voice was becoming increasingly shrill with fear. "They're asking about property fraud, unauthorized asset transfers, and potential compromise of classified personnel." 4 federal agents had indeed arrived at Amanda's residence at 5:07 p.m. 2 FBI agents from the Counterintelligence Division, 1 DHS investigator from our Internal Security Section, and 1 Treasury Department criminal investigator. They carried comprehensive federal warrants authorizing seizure of all materials related to the property fraud and potential security violations. "Amanda," I said calmly, maintaining the same professional tone I used when briefing senior policymakers about national security threats, "you announced at Christmas that you were taking ownership of my property without authorization. That constitutes federal property fraud targeting a senior intelligence analyst with access to classified financial intelligence systems." "But it's just family real estate management. I thought family members could help each other with property investments." "Federal law doesn't recognize family relationships as authorization for fraudulent property transfers involving monitored government assets. You committed serious federal crimes targeting someone with access to sensitive national security intelligence, which triggers enhanced penalties and mandatory counterintelligence investigation." The line was quiet except for her increasingly panicked breathing and the sound of federal agents explaining comprehensive search procedures and national security protocols. "Kevin, you have to stop this. Tell them this was all family cooperation and business planning." "I cannot stop a federal investigation with national security implications, Amanda. You committed federal property fraud targeting classified intelligence personnel, admitted to those crimes in front of 31 witnesses, and potentially compromised security monitoring systems designed to protect sensitive government operations." Agent Sullivan's voice could be heard in the background, explaining federal arrest procedures and the enhanced penalties that apply when crimes target intelligence personnel with access to classified information. "They're asking about my real estate clients, business associates, and anyone who might have knowledge about your government work," Amanda said, her voice breaking as the full scope of her situation became apparent. "They want to know if anyone encouraged me to target your property specifically. Amanda, you should cooperate fully with federal agents and retain qualified federal criminal defense counsel immediately," I replied using the same measured tone I employed when coordinating with law enforcement agencies about sensitive intelligence matters. "Providing false information about crimes targeting national security personnel will result in additional charges for obstruction of justice and false statements to federal investigators." At 7:18 p.m., Amanda was formally arrested and charged with federal property fraud, wire fraud, attempted theft of monitored government assets, and violations of federal security protocols protecting intelligence personnel. She was processed at the federal detention facility and held under enhanced security procedures pending arraignment. The charges were comprehensive and carried severe penalties. Property fraud targeting intelligence personnel triggers enhanced sentencing guidelines designed to protect national security operations. Wire fraud involving monitored government assets carries potential sentences of up to 20 years in federal prison. The security protocol violations added additional penalties because Amanda had potentially compromised systems designed to protect classified intelligence personnel. The real estate attorney Amanda had hired to process the fraudulent property transfer faced immediate investigation for their role in facilitating crimes against intelligence personnel. Their law license was suspended pending federal investigation, and their practice was shut down while authorities determined the extent of their knowledge about the property fraud scheme. Amanda's real estate license was immediately revoked when state authorities learned of her arrest on federal charges involving property fraud and potential national security violations. Her real estate practice was permanently closed, and her professional liability insurance was voided due to criminal activity. My family's reaction was predictably supportive of Amanda and critical of the federal government's overreaction to what they still characterized as family property planning, rather than serious federal crimes with national security implications. My mother called repeatedly, demanding that I fix this situation, by explaining to my supervisors that Amanda's actions were motivated by family cooperation rather than criminal intent. She couldn't understand that federal property fraud cases involving intelligence personnel require mandatory prosecution regardless of family relationships or claimed motivations. At Amanda's federal arraignment, she appeared in federal court wearing detention clothing and looking exhausted from her time in enhanced security holding. Her court-appointed federal defender advised her that the charges were extremely serious and carried mandatory minimum sentences due to the national security implications. Federal prosecutors presented extensive evidence including Amanda's recorded admissions at the Christmas gathering, testimony from 31 witnesses who heard her announce the property fraud, detailed financial records showing the attempted unauthorized transfer, and expert testimony from DHS officials explaining federal monitoring systems and security protocols. The federal judge denied bail entirely, citing national security concerns, flight risk, and the potential for additional criminal activity targeting intelligence personnel. Amanda would remain in federal detention until trial, which was scheduled under expedited procedures due to the counterintelligence implications. During pretrial investigation, federal agents discovered that Amanda had researched my government employment and security clearance status more extensively than she had initially admitted. Her computer records showed searches for information about DHS personnel, federal employee asset monitoring, and methods for transferring government employee property. The additional evidence suggested potential premeditation and raised questions about whether Amanda's actions represented isolated criminal behavior or part of a broader scheme to compromise intelligence personnel through family exploitation. 12 weeks later, facing overwhelming evidence and potential sentences exceeding 15 years in federal prison, Amanda accepted a plea agreement to avoid even longer sentences after trial. She received 6 years in federal prison followed by 5 years supervised probation with permanent restrictions on real estate activities. The federal judge ordered restitution of $134,000 to cover federal investigation costs, counterintelligence review expenses, enhanced security protocol implementation, and administrative costs for comprehensive background reinvestigation of potentially compromised intelligence personnel. During sentencing, federal prosecutors explained that crimes targeting intelligence personnel carry enhanced penalties because they potentially compromise national security operations and require extensive counterintelligence investigations to ensure classified information remains protected. My position at DHS was unaffected by Amanda's criminal activity, though my security clearance underwent comprehensive review and my asset monitoring was significantly enhanced as a standard precautionary measure. Federal security officials conducted extensive counterintelligence investigations to ensure that Amanda's crimes hadn't compromised any classified operations or intelligence sources. The family Christmas tradition was permanently altered after numerous relatives received federal subpoenas as material witnesses in national security proceedings. Uncle Tom, Cousin Robert, and 12 other family members were required to provide detailed testimony about Amanda's admissions and the family's reaction to her criminal announcements. Several relatives faced their own security investigations when background researchers discovered that other family members had made inappropriate inquiries about my government work, security clearance requirements, and federal employee benefits over the years. I continue working at DHS analyzing financial intelligence related to national security threats and terrorist financing operations. My duplex remains registered under enhanced federal monitoring as a protected asset subject to the highest levels of security oversight. The difference is that family gatherings are now limited to immediate family members who have undergone security interviews and signed agreements about appropriate conduct regarding my employment and assets. Amanda won't be eligible for release until she serves her complete federal sentence under enhanced supervision. My parents occasionally request that I provide financial assistance for Amanda's legal fees and commissary expenses. I explain that federal employees cannot provide financial support to family members convicted of crimes targeting intelligence personnel, and that any such assistance would jeopardize national security and result in severe career consequences. They don't understand that Amanda's conviction permanently restricts her from real estate activities, professional licensing, and most forms of business employment due to the national security implications of her crimes. Last month I received a letter from Amanda at the federal correctional facility where she's serving her enhanced security sentence. She wrote that she's beginning to understand the severity of targeting intelligence personnel with property fraud, but she still doesn't comprehend why family property management resulted in federal prison and permanent career destruction. I haven't responded to the letter. Federal employees are prohibited from maintaining correspondence with individuals convicted of crimes targeting intelligence personnel, and my security clearance requires complete avoidance of contact with compromised family members who have threatened national security operations. Family Christmas celebrations are now limited to security-cleared immediate relatives who understand the restrictions surrounding my employment and assets. The duplex continues generating rental income under enhanced federal protection, exactly as it should for property belonging to someone with access to classified financial intelligence. Amanda's real estate career ended permanently with her federal conviction for targeting intelligence personnel. Her attempted property fraud was added to federal databases as evidence of potential compromise attempts against classified government operations. Some lessons about national security law and the consequences of targeting intelligence personnel can only be learned through federal imprisonment and permanent security restrictions. Amanda is receiving comprehensive education about the enhanced penalties that apply when family members attempt to exploit or compromise classified government personnel. The property remains exactly where it belongs, under the highest levels of federal protection as a monitored asset belonging to someone with access to sensitive national security intelligence systems.
You were never part of this family, Patricia hissed, her perfectly manicured nails drumming against the marble kitchen counter. Victoria comes from a good family. She's the kind of daughter-in-law I always wanted. You were just a mistake my son made. I stood quietly, watching my mother-in-law's satisfaction grow with each moment of my silence. The invitation to my husband's engagement party lay between us on the counter, its gold lettering catching the afternoon light. An engagement party for a man who was still legally married to me. My name is Olivia, and at 29, I was watching my marriage crumble under the weight of my mother-in-law's ambition and my husband's cowardice. James and I had been married for 3 years, but to Patricia, I was always the woman who stole her precious son from his destined path. Victoria's father is a federal judge, Patricia continued, her voice dripping with superiority. What does your family have? A small accounting firm. Please, James needs someone who can elevate his status, not drag him down. I picked up my coffee mug, taking a slow sip while Patricia watched, clearly disappointed by my lack of reaction. She'd expected tears, pleading, maybe even anger. Instead, she got calm acceptance. The engagement party is next month, she said, sliding the invitation closer to me. I trust you'll make yourself scarce. We wouldn't want any unpleasantness. What Patricia didn't know was that I'd seen this coming for months. The late-night calls James took in his study. The mysterious business meetings that never appeared in his calendar. The way he'd started moving money between accounts. I wasn't just James's wife. I was a certified forensic accountant. Numbers told stories, and his numbers had been telling quite a tale. Of course, I replied, standing up. I'll be gone by tonight. Patricia's triumphant smile faltered slightly. This was too easy, and she knew it. Just like that? No fighting for your marriage? I gathered my purse, letting a small smile play across my lips. You're right, Patricia. I was never part of this family. Why fight for something that was never real? As I walked toward the door, she called after me. James wants an amicable separation. No lawyers, no messy paperwork. Just sign the papers he'll send you next week. I turned back one last time. Tell James not to worry. I'll handle everything. That evening, as I packed my belongings from the house James and I had shared, I thought about the past 3 years. I'd loved him truly and deeply, but love wasn't enough when you were fighting against a mother's influence and a man's weakness. My phone buzzed with a text from James. Mom told me you're leaving. It's better this way. Victoria's father can help my career. I hope you understand. We can keep this simple. No need for lawyers. No need for lawyers. Of course, that's what they wanted. A quiet exit, a simple erasure of my existence from their lives. They didn't know about the documentation I'd been gathering for months. The records of James's hidden accounts, the texts, the emails. They didn't know about my weekly meetings with my own lawyer, carefully building a case while they thought I was at yoga class. As I loaded the last box into my car, our elderly neighbor, Mrs. Thompson, came over. "Olivia, dear, are you going somewhere?" "Just taking some things to storage," I lied smoothly. "Redecorating, you know how it is." She nodded, though her eyes showed concern. She'd seen Victoria visiting our house, seen James's late-night returns, noticed the changes before I'd even admitted them to myself. That night, I checked into a small apartment I quietly rented 2 months ago. The lease was under my maiden name, paid for with money from an account Patricia and James knew nothing about. On a kitchen counter, I spread out my documents, bank statements, property deeds, business records. Everything that proved what James and Patricia had been planning, and everything that would protect me when the time came. My phone buzzed again, this time with a message from Patricia. "I've already told the country club about James and Victoria's engagement. The papers will be there next week. Sign them quickly, and we can all move on." I smiled, thinking about the carefully organized files on my laptop, the recordings of conversations, the trail of evidence I gathered. Patricia wanted me gone, erased from their lives as if I'd never existed. James wanted a clean break without complications. They would get exactly what they wanted, just not in the way they expected. Opening my laptop, I sent a quick email to my lawyer. "It's time. Start with phase 1. The response came within minutes. "Everything's ready. Are you sure about this?" I looked at the engagement invitation still sitting in my purse, at the photos of James and me still on my phone, at the life I was supposedly leaving behind. "Yes," I typed back. "Let's show them what no lawyers really means." Patricia thought she'd won, that she'd finally removed the stain from her perfect family portrait. James thought he could simply trade up for a better model. No consequences, no complications. They'd orchestrated my exit so carefully, never suspecting that I'd been orchestrating something of my own. As I got ready for bed in my new apartment, I couldn't help but smile at the irony. They wanted to erase me from their lives, and I was going to help them do exactly that. But erasure works both ways, and they were about to learn that sometimes getting what you want comes with unexpected consequences. My phone buzzed one last time. A message from Victoria. "I hope there are no hard feelings. James says you understand this is for the best." I didn't reply. There would be time for responses later. For now, I had a plan to set in motion, and the best part was, they'd handed me all the pieces I needed to make it work. Patricia wanted me gone. I'd give her exactly what she wanted, and so much more than she bargained for. A month passed, and Patricia's perfectly planned engagement party was in full swing at the country club. I knew this because Mrs. Thompson, unable to contain her outrage, kept me updated with photos and details. There was James, beaming beside Victoria in her designer dress. There was Patricia, holding court among her social circle, probably sharing the sanitized version of her son's previous relationship. I watched it all unfold from my laptop screen in my new apartment while having a video call with my lawyer, Sarah. "They really went all out," she said, examining the photos. "Your mother-in-law even got the governor to attend." "Of course she did," I replied, scrolling through the bank statements on my screen. Patricia never does anything small, especially when she's trying to impress Victoria's family. "Speaking of impressive," Sarah said, "our forensic team finished analyzing those transactions you flagged. The pattern is interesting." Interesting was an understatement. Over the past year, James had been systematically moving money between accounts, creating a complex web of transactions that would have been nearly impossible to trace for someone who didn't specialize in following money trails. "He's been preparing for this," I explained, pulling up a particular set of transfers, setting aside funds, creating hidden accounts. "They probably thought I wouldn't notice. But they forgot what you do for a living," Sarah smiled. They had indeed. In their rush to erase me, Patricia and James had overlooked one crucial detail. I wasn't just James's wife. I was a forensic accountant who specialized in uncovering financial fraud. Every mysterious transaction, every hidden account, every attempt to shield assets, I documented it all. My phone buzzed with a text from James. "The papers are ready. Can we meet tomorrow to sign everything?" "Perfect timing," Sarah said, watching me read the message. "Shall we proceed with phase 2? I nodded, thinking about the carefully crafted plan we'd been executing. They want simple. Let's keep it simple. The next morning, I met James at a quiet cafe of his choosing. He looked nervous, fiddling with his designer watch. A recent gift from Victoria's father, no doubt. "You look well," he said awkwardly, sliding a folder across the table. "These are just basic separation papers, no complicated legal terms. We both walk away clean." I opened the folder, pretending to review documents I'd already seen. My own legal team had obtained a copy weeks ago through channels James didn't know existed. "Everything seems to be in order," I said softly, pulling out my pen. James visibly relaxed. "I knew you'd understand," he said, reaching for his coffee. "You always were reasonable. That's what I told Victoria." I signed my name with a flourish, then slid the papers back to him. "All done. Simple, just like you wanted." He frowned slightly, probably thrown off by my easy compliance. That's it. You don't want to review anything with your lawyer? No lawyers, remember? That's what you and Patricia wanted." James smiled, clearly relieved. "Thank you, Olivia. I know this isn't easy, but it's better this way. You'll find someone more suitable." As he gathered the papers, I checked my watch. "You should get those filed quickly. I'm sure Patricia is eager to start planning the wedding." He nodded, standing up. "She is. The venue's already booked for next month. Victoria's father pulled some strings." "How nice," I replied, gathering my things. "Oh, and James, you might want to check your email when you get home." He looked confused but didn't ask. We said our goodbyes, and I watched him walk away, clutching his precious papers, having no idea what he just set in motion. Back in my apartment, I opened my laptop and sent a brief message to Sarah. "It's done. Start the clock." Within hours, James would discover what no lawyers really meant. The papers he'd had me sign weren't just separation documents, they were my key to executing everything we prepared. My phone rang. "Patricia." I let it go to voicemail, then played her message on speaker. "How dare you?" Her voice crackled with rage. "What did you do?" "James just called me in a panic. Something about accounts being frozen. This isn't what we agreed to." I smiled, thinking about the carefully worded clauses hidden in those simple papers, the ones neither James nor Patricia had bothered to read carefully. They'd been so focused on erasing me quickly and quietly that they'd handed me exactly the tool I needed. Another call came in, Victoria this time. I ignored that one too. Let them all panic together. Sarah called next. "It's done," she said. "The judge signed off on everything. The freeze is in place." "How long before they figure it out?" I asked. Given the complexity of what James set up, days, maybe weeks. By then, the audit will be in full swing. I walked to my window, looking out at the city lights. James and Patricia had wanted to erase me, to write me out of their story as if I'd never existed. Instead, they'd given me the perfect opportunity to expose everything they tried to hide. "Did you see the guest list from the engagement party?" Sarah asked. The governor, 3 state senators, Victoria's father, the federal judge, all witnessing James and Patricia's big announcement. I finished, all about to learn exactly what kind of family they're really dealing with. My phone kept buzzing with messages, from James, from Patricia, from Victoria, even from country club acquaintances probably hoping for gossip. I ignored them all. They'd wanted me gone, erased, forgotten. They were about to learn that sometimes the people you try to erase are the ones who leave the most permanent mark. I opened my laptop one last time that evening, reviewing the documents that would soon become public record. Everything was there. The hidden accounts, the questionable transactions, the carefully constructed facade of wealth that James and Patricia had built. No lawyers, they'd said. They should have hired the best they could find. 3 months after the engagement party, I sat in Sarah's office, watching the chaos unfold on the local news. "Prominent family under investigation." The headline read, followed by a photo of James and Patricia leaving the courthouse, their faces hidden behind designer sunglasses. They're calling it one of the biggest financial scandals of the year, Sarah said, muting the TV. The federal investigation has expanded to include Victoria's father. Apparently, he was more involved than anyone suspected. I nodded, thinking about the domino effect that had started with those simple separation papers. The documents I'd signed had triggered an automatic audit, a clause buried in legal language that James hadn't bothered to review. That audit had revealed not just his hidden accounts, but a whole network of questionable transactions involving Victoria's father's court cases. Patricia called again, Sarah mentioned. She's offering a settlement. Wants to make this all go away quietly. I almost laughed. A bit late for quiet, isn't it? The scandal had exploded in exactly the way Patricia had always feared. Her carefully curated social image was in shambles. The country club had suspended their membership. The governor had publicly distanced himself from the family. Victoria's father was facing an ethics investigation. My phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Thompson. You won't believe what happened. Patricia tried to get into the country club for lunch. They turned her away at the door. The mighty had fallen, and they'd orchestrated their own descent. James had attempted to contact me multiple times, his messages evolving from angry accusations to desperate pleas. The last one arrived this morning. Please, Olivia, you have to help me fix this. I'll leave Victoria. We can start over. I know now what really matters. I deleted it without responding. He still didn't get it. This wasn't about revenge or getting him back. This was about consequences, something Patricia had never taught him to face. The FBI wants to interview you again, Sarah said, pulling me from my thoughts. As the whistleblower, your testimony is crucial. I nodded. Schedule it. They should know everything. My phone rang. Victoria. After 3 months of silence, this was her first attempt to contact me. Curious, I answered. How did you know? She asked, her voice small. About the money, about my father's involvement. How long did you know? I'm a forensic accountant, Victoria. Following money trails is what I do. Maybe if you and Patricia hadn't been so busy planning that engagement party, you might have remembered that. There was a long pause. They're saying Dad might go to prison. James too. Actions have consequences, I replied simply, then ended the call. Standing by Sarah's office window, I watched the city go about its business. Somewhere across town, Patricia was probably in her kitchen, wondering how her perfect plans had crumbled. James was likely meeting with lawyers, finally understanding why keeping things simple had been his biggest mistake. What now? Sarah asked, joining me at the window. Now, I focus on my life. I just accepted a position with the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit. They were quite impressed with how I handled this case. Sarah smiled. From unwanted daughter-in-law to federal investigator. Not bad for someone Patricia thought she could erase. That evening, I returned to my apartment, my new home, bought with my own money, free from any connection to James or his family. On my desk sat a framed copy of the simple separation papers that had started it all. A reminder that sometimes the best revenge isn't fighting back, it's letting people trip over their own arrogance. My phone buzzed one last time, Patricia again. I answered, curious about what she could possibly have to say. You've destroyed this family, she said, her voice thick with tears. No, Patricia, you did that yourself. I just showed everyone the truth you tried to hide. We were going to give you a generous settlement, she protested. You could have just taken the money and disappeared. You wanted to erase me, I replied calmly. Instead, you erased yourselves. I hung up, feeling a sense of closure. They had wanted a simple ending. No lawyers, no complications, no trace of my existence in their perfect lives. Instead, they got exactly what they deserved: exposure, consequences, and a permanent record of their own choices. As I looked out at the sunset, I thought about how different my life was from what I'd imagined 3 months ago. I wasn't James's forgotten wife or Patricia's discarded daughter-in-law. I was Olivia Stevens, FBI financial crimes investigator, and I had a new life to build. The text message lit up my phone at 3 a.m. Sign the divorce papers tomorrow. No property claims, no alimony. Take it or I'll make you regret ever meeting me. I stared at the screen, my hands steady despite the late hour. After 15 years of marriage, this was James' idea of an ending. A threatening text message while he lay in bed with his mistress. My name is Olivia, and at 42, I never expected to be starting over. But here I was sitting in my home office surrounded by the evidence of my husband's betrayal, carefully collected over the past year. I typed back a simple response: check your email. Within minutes, my phone exploded with calls. I let them go to voicemail, each one more desperate than the last. James's voice grew increasingly panicked as he realized what I'd sent him: dozens of videos from our home security system, all carefully timestamped and archived. "Olivia, pick up the damn phone," he shouted in his latest message. "You had no right to record private conversations." But I did have the right. It was my security system, installed in my home after I first suspected something was wrong. The cameras had captured everything: James and his mistress, Vanessa, planning how they forced me out. Their careful schemes about hiding assets, their discussions about making me seem unstable to gain an advantage in the divorce. "She'll never fight back," Vanessa had said in one clip, lounging on my couch while I was supposedly at my sister's house. "James says she's too afraid of confrontation." They underestimated me. Badly. Another text from James: "Delete those videos now. You're violating our privacy." I smiled, remembering all those nights I'd spent cataloging their conversations, building my case while they thought I was oblivious. James had always treated me like I was naive, too trusting. He never realized that trust and stupidity aren't the same thing. The next morning, I walked into our kitchen to find James waiting, his face flushed with anger. Gone was the confident man who'd threatened me via text just hours ago. In his place stood someone who finally realized he wasn't in control. "What do you want?" he demanded, his voice hoarse. I poured myself a cup of coffee, taking my time to respond. "I want what's fair, James. Nothing more, nothing less." "Those recordings won't hold up in court," he said, but his voice wavered. "My lawyer says." "Your lawyer hasn't seen them yet," I interrupted calmly, "but mine has." Along with the offshore account statements, the property transfers to Vanessa's name, and the correspondence with your banker about hiding our joint assets. His face went pale. "How did you find out? I'm not the helpless housewife you and Vanessa think I am. I've known about your affair for a year. I've watched you plan, scheme, and lie. I've documented everything." "She's different," James said, his voice softening. "She understands me. We're in love." I couldn't help but laugh. "Love? Is that what you call plotting to leave your wife destitute? Planning to claim I'm mentally unstable so you can take everything we've built together?" He slumped into a chair, the fight draining from him. "What do you want?" he repeated. "I want a fair division of assets. I want the house you promised Vanessa she could redecorate. I want half of everything you tried to hide." I took another sip of coffee. "And I want you to remember something, James. You didn't marry a fool. You married a woman who loved you enough to trust you, but was smart enough to protect herself." My phone buzzed again. Vanessa this time. I showed James the screen, where she was demanding he handle me before I ruined everything. Her messages grew increasingly frantic as he didn't respond. "She's 23, James," I said softly. "Did you really think she wanted you for your charm? Or was it the lifestyle you promised her, the lifestyle you planned to steal from me?" He buried his face in his hands, and for a moment I saw the man I'd married 15 years ago. But that man was gone, replaced by someone who'd rather threaten and scheme than face the consequences of his actions. "I'll have my lawyer send over the revised divorce agreement today," I said, standing up. "One that reflects a fair division of everything. All the properties, accounts, and investments, including the ones you thought I didn't know about." As I walked out of the kitchen, James called after me, "How long have you been planning this?" I turned back, meeting his eyes. "Since the day you started planning against me. The difference is, I did it to protect myself. You did it to destroy me. Remember that when you're signing the papers." The look on his face told me he finally understood. He hadn't married someone he could bully into submission. He'd married someone who knew her worth and had proof to back it up. Part 1 ends with me walking away, leaving James to face the reality that his carefully constructed plan had crumbled. His phone kept buzzing with Vanessa's messages, but we both knew everything had changed. The next few weeks would reshape both our lives, but only one of us was prepared for what was coming. The next few days unfolded like a carefully choreographed dance. James moved out, taking only his personal belongings after my lawyer made it clear that removing anything else would result in immediate legal action. The security cameras captured him explaining to Vanessa in our driveway why they couldn't start moving her things in as planned. "This is ridiculous," she shouted, loud enough for the cameras to pick up. "You promised me this house." You said she'd be too scared to fight back. I watched the footage later that evening, noting how James seemed to age years in just days. The confident man who threatened me via text was replaced by someone who jumped at every email notification, wondering what else I might reveal. My lawyer, Diana, called with an update. James' attorney reached out, she said, a hint of satisfaction in her voice. They want to discuss a settlement. I'm sure they do, I replied, thinking of the videos I hadn't sent yet. The ones showing James and Vanessa discussing how they claim I was unstable, planning to use my grief over my mother's recent death against me in court. They're offering a 60-40 split in his favor, Diana continued. Should I tell them where to stick that offer? No, I said, surprising myself with my calmness. Tell them we'll meet. I want to see their faces when we play the rest of the recordings. The meeting was set for the following week. I spent the intervening days organizing more evidence, bank statements showing suspicious transfers, text messages James thought he deleted but had backed up to our shared cloud account, photos of him and Vanessa using our vacation home when I was supposedly there alone. My sister Kate came over the night before the meeting, bringing wine and her signature straight-talking support. How are you really doing? She asked, studying my face carefully. I considered the question while sipping my wine. Honestly, I'm angry. Not about the affair, that's on him. I'm angry that he thought so little of me, that he and his girlfriend sat in my home plotting to destroy me. And now? Now I'm ready to show them exactly who they underestimated. The settlement meeting was held in Diana's office. James arrived with his lawyer and, surprisingly, Vanessa. She perched beside him in designer clothes I suspected were purchased with money from our accounts. Before we begin, James's lawyer started, my client is willing to be generous despite the unconventional surveillance methods used. Diana smiled, opening her laptop. Interesting choice of words. Before discussing generosity, let's review some footage from last month. The color drained from James's face as Diana played a video of him and Vanessa in our home office, going through my personal files. The insurance policy has to be here somewhere, James was saying in the footage. Once we have that, we can start building the case about her mental state. Vanessa shifted uncomfortably in her seat as her voice filled the room. What if she fights back? She seems different lately, more confident. She won't, James had assured her. She's too afraid of being alone. Trust me, I know how to handle her. Diana paused the video. There's more. Hours more. Should we continue? James' lawyer cleared his throat. Perhaps we should discuss a more equitable distribution of assets. Perhaps we should. Diana agreed, pulling out a thick folder. Let's start with the offshore accounts. Specifically, the one in the Caymans where Mr. Harrison has been transferring joint funds. I watched as James's carefully constructed world continued to crumble. Vanessa's designer heel tapped nervously against the floor as Diana methodically laid out every scheme, every plan, every betrayal. A 50-50 split of all assets, Diana stated firmly. The house goes to my client, and Mr. Harrison will retract any statements suggesting mental instability on Mrs. Harrison's part. And if I refuse? James asked, but his voice lacked conviction. I spoke for the first time since the meeting began. Then we go to court, and I play these videos for everyone to see. Your colleagues, your friends, your family. Everyone will know exactly what kind of man you are. Vanessa stood up abruptly. This is insane. James, you promised me. Sit down, James hissed, but she was already heading for the door. You said this would be easy, she shouted. You said she was weak. The door slammed behind her, leaving a heavy silence in the room. I met James's eyes across the table. Sign the papers, I said quietly. End this now, and those videos stay private. Drag this out, and I'll make sure everyone knows the truth. His lawyer whispered something in his ear, and James nodded slowly, reaching for the pen. As he signed, I realized this wasn't the victory I'd imagined during those long nights of collecting evidence. It felt more like the end of a long illness. Painful but necessary for healing to begin. Part 2 ends with James signing the papers, his hand trembling slightly. The man who threatened me just days ago now couldn't even meet my eyes. As I walked out of Diana's office, I heard Vanessa's angry voice in the hallway, demanding explanations James couldn't give. But for the first time since discovering the betrayal, none of it mattered. I was free. 6 months after the settlement meeting, I stood in my newly renovated kitchen, sipping morning coffee and watching the sunrise. The house felt different now, lighter, peaceful. I'd repainted every room, replaced the furniture they plotted on, and transformed the space into something entirely my own. The last box of James' remaining items sat by the door, ready for his sister to collect. I hadn't seen him since the settlement, though I'd heard plenty through the grapevine. Vanessa had left him 3 weeks after the meeting. Once she realized the lifestyle he promised her wasn't materializing, she'd moved on to someone else, someone whose promises she hadn't yet learned to doubt. My phone buzzed with a text from Kate. "Have you seen the email?" I hadn't checked my personal email yet, but when I did, I understood her message. James had sent a lengthy apology, the kind that comes after months of reflection and regret. "I know it's too late," he wrote, "but I'm sorry for everything. Not just the affair or the divorce, but for underestimating you, for thinking I could bully and threaten you into giving up what was rightfully yours. You deserve better." I deleted the email without responding. His apology might have been sincere, but it wasn't something I needed anymore. My healing hadn't depended on his remorse. Later that afternoon, I met Kate for lunch at our favorite cafe. She'd been my rock through everything, and now she was helping me plan my future. "So the house in Provence?" she asked, grinning over her salad. "Have you decided?" I smiled, pulling out my tablet to show her the listing. The small villa I found would be perfect for the writing retreat I'd always dreamed of running. James had laughed at that dream, called it impractical. Now, with my share of our assets and newfound freedom, it was becoming reality. "I'm making an offer tomorrow," I said. "The realtor says it's perfect for small groups, and the advance bookings are already coming in." "Look at you," Kate beamed. "From collecting evidence to collecting dreams, I'm so proud of you." "I learned something through all this," I said, thinking back to those dark days of discovery and planning. Sometimes the worst betrayals lead us to our best decisions. As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a call from Diana. "Just wanted to let you know," she said when I answered. "James, the lawyer, reached out. He's contesting the offshore account split." I felt a calm settle over me, the same calm I felt when responding to his threatening text all those months ago. "Send him the video from March 15th, I replied. "The one where he and Vanessa discuss hiding those specific accounts." Diana chuckled. "Already done. I don't expect we'll hear any more protests." After lunch, I walked through the park where James and I used to spend Sunday afternoons. The autumn leaves were turning, painting the world in warm golds and reds. A year ago, I'd walked this same path in tears, having just discovered his affair. Now, I walked it with purpose, my head held high. My phone buzzed again, a message from James. "My lawyer says to drop the contest. You really did think of everything, didn't you?" I thought about responding but decided against it. The time for conversations between us had passed. Instead, I opened my laptop at a nearby cafe and finalized my offer on the Provence villa. That evening, as I sorted through old photos for my upcoming memoir writing workshop, I found our wedding picture. We looked so young, so hopeful. I didn't feel sadness looking at it anymore, just appreciation for the journey that had brought me here. Kate called as I was making dinner. "James's sister picked up his box," she reported. "She said he's moving out of state. Apparently, his reputation here is pretty much destroyed." "That's not my problem anymore," I replied, and I meant it. The truth was, I didn't need to see James face consequences or hear his apologies. His betrayal had taught me something invaluable, that I was stronger than anyone, including myself, had believed. Every scheme he and Vanessa had plotted had pushed me to think smarter, plan better, and value myself more. As I finished my dinner on the patio, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors, I felt profound gratitude. Not for the pain or betrayal, but for the woman I'd become because of it. The one who didn't just survive threats and manipulation, but who turned them into stepping stones toward a better life. My phone lit up with a confirmation email. My offer on the villa had been accepted. In the reflection of the glass doors, I saw myself smile, and it reached my eyes. James had threatened to make me regret ever meeting him, but instead, he'd made me grateful for finding my own strength. Sometimes the best revenge isn't in the evidence you collect or the battles you win, but in the life you build from the ashes of betrayal. Mine was just beginning, and it was more beautiful than I'd ever imagined.